in Lusaka,
Kitwe, Kabwe, Ndola, Chingola, Kafue, Chipata, Solwezi, Mungu, the tourist city, Livingston, Choma, Kasama, Chinsali, and Mazabuka.
Tune in to your first interactive business and financial news channel. Who knows? You might learn one or two things.
Millennium TV. We mean business. Who are we? What are we about? Say you want to learn about business or get latest news updates in business news, social and economic issues, stock exchange, latest exchange rates, and all financial matters, or you want to learn on how to manage your money from savings, banking, insurance, to maybe our new traditional way of doing things like village banking. And if you're like me, planning and constantly making sound financial decisions is essential. So I need to keep abreast with upcoming investments, taxes, technology, or entrepreneurship prospects. Interesting, right? So what if I told you by just one click you can learn from mining, agriculture, tourism, manufacturing services, and yes, entertainment industries. After all, the more you know about money, the better financially you will be. So who are we? What are we about? Millennium TV, your first business and financial news television channel. Catch us on Top Star, Channel 95, or follow us on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube. Millennium TV, we mean business. Millennium TV. Millennium TV. We mean.
Coming up on the Corridors of Power tonight, we discuss the implications of the adjusted monetary policy rate. Yesterday, Bank of Zambia Governor Dr. Denny Kalyarya held policy briefing where he did indicate the central bank's decision to adjust upwards the monetary policy rate by 0.5 basis points from 8.5% to 9%. Now, this means that in this particular quarter, the Bank of Zambia policy stance is focused on reducing money supply, since an increase in the MPR entails an upward adjustment in interest rates and therefore an increase in the cost of borrowing. But the question we answer on the Corridors of Power tonight: what implications does this have on the business community as well as the ordinary Zambians? Economist Kelvin Chisanga joins me on the show tonight to discuss this very important subject in depth. I'm your host. My name is Paul Shingongo. You can also get interactive with us by dropping your comments and questions on the subject under discussion on the show tonight. Drop your comments. We'll be glad to interact with you. I'm joined in right now by Mr. Kelvin Chisanga, who is an economic analyst. Thank you so much, Mr. Chisanga, for joining us on tonight's edition of the Corridors of Power.
Thank you so much. It's always my pleasure. Good evening, viewers.
It's been a while since I last hosted you on Millennium TV. It's good to have you.
Thank you so much. It's always my pleasure.
Let's get straight into this. First of all, I want us to answer this in two fronts, because I understand there are also other people that might not even understand what the monetary policy rate is, and before we even get to the implications of the adjustment, help us understand in a layman's language for the various viewers out there, what exactly do we mean when we say MPR has been adjusted, whether upwards or downwards?
Okay, maybe just to put into scenario here, we've got two forms of parity in the nation, and all that we have we electing offices like the politicians, where we elect the president, we elect the MP, and we elect these other people that actually come into the policy organizations. You know that on the political side, we've got what we call a fiscal policies, which the government, actually the central government, and pronounce certain things that they want to actually do in the nation. On the other side also, we've got the monetary policy which is anchored the central bank. And the central bank has got headship which governs with the governor as well as the two other governors, who are actually basically the deputy governors in that. So basically, what they do that each year they sit about 4 times to just see how the police can actually drive the economy. So in this case, what I would say in a very layman language is that this police is a police that most of the institutions uses to actually peg our loans, peg our lending facilities to ensure that we are also being guided from there. So it's a instrument that is driving the financial institutions in the nation. And also, it's one policy which also drives the supply of money in the economy, as well as also it's a policy that can help to stimulate economic activities in a way.
Great. Now, I know that at the beginning of this year, you and I had a conversation when we saw the first adjustment from 8% to 8.5%
yes.
Earlier during the course of this year. Should be the first quarter, if I'm not mistaken. And of course, we did indicate some of the things that we expect. We didn't see any adjustment in the last 2 briefings held by the Bank of Zambia. Was this expected, the adjustment from 8.5 to 9%?
It is something that is not expected as per se, but obviously we can understand it from the way the budget for next year is driving, because if you look at the budget for next year, it has taken a stance of expansionary level where we are going to have a lot of aggregate demand in terms of expenditure. And even just when you look at a lot of actually being put into the next year's budget, there are quite a number of key fundamentals that will actually to say who are likely to have a situation where we're going to have a huge demand in terms of the flow of money in the economy. And also, even just when you look at the other aspect, the aspect where they are also looking at issues to do with the possible increase of fuel as well as electricity. These two can actually also disadvantage our economic growth.
I'm glad you've raised that part, because that's something also I want us to talk about later on the program tonight, the issue of the implications of the possible increase in tariffs, both the electricity as well as fuel. But that's a conversation I want us to have later on the program tonight. But first of all,
sure.
you mentioned that we are expecting some projections come next year based on the budget that was presented earlier 2 weeks ago by the Minister of Finance. Now, one thing we understand from this adjustment of the MPR, Mr. Chisanga, is that the Bank of Zambia is currently focusing on reducing money supply. And that's what this entails, because the lending rates will also be high, which means even SMEs who have difficulties in terms of accessing loans. But can we say there's a justification right now to reduce the supply of money on the market at the moment?
Well, the justification, quite of them. One of the key fundamental issues, what has spoken about, the issue of running an expansionary, which is actually projected to actually take effect as we go to next year. Obviously, this MPR, which has been pronounced this time, it's taking into full account that this is the last part of the MPR for this year, and we are going to the next year's budget cycle. So it is quite imperative that they are able to actually look futuristic in this case. And what we have basically done is the forward-looking concept which they have employed from there. But obviously, when you look at the fundamentals that have actually been performing in the third quarter of this year, they have been in a very contexture in that we have actually maintained the policy rate at the level that we are actually have it. Probably they should have waited to see if there could be changes that would likely to bring about inflation. Of course, we have understood that inflation now is even eating back to a point where it's recording good positive feedback. As we speak today, we are talking of inflation coming to about 19.3%. Yes. So basically, it tells to say that the current the policy working in the Fed quarter has really been helping very much. But the worry has been the worry on the government securities, which has actually also triggered a factor there as well. But obviously, that has been the immediate concept which they have considered for now. Obviously, we know that biggest here is inflation, which they have targeted so much, which they are looking forward to ensure that it comes within the bound.
When we look at it in a broader perspective, Mr. Chisanga, one thing we can tell is that economic activities will reduce, and even the issue of job creation is going to be hurt, which is something that, don't you feel it's against what the New Dawn administration has been talking about, where they've been emphasizing on promoting the small and medium enterprises that are coming up now, with even the creation of the new ministry that is focused purely on them and the advancement. But won't this affect economic activities, and what impact will it have, especially when economic activities are affected?
Well, you know that the economic growth is growing. It's slowest. If we are to see next year will unfold, it may actually react to destabilize a bit, because obviously there has now been a change in the economic fundamentals. Obviously, we know that when we look at the SME inflation has not been so much, even as we get to the previous third quarter, but obviously we know that government has been steering the concept of local context policies, which actually entails to say that the participation of economic from the profile. And we know that government has put a very strong political will in regards to how things should work out by even coming with the Minister of Small and Medium Enterprise Ministry, which is a very good signal, signifying that they are able to take this thing forward. We know that if you look at the way we can drive the economy, it's through the small scales businesses that we are able to see. And government alone, they cannot make money. Even with the blue chip companies, or even just these other corporate outfits that we are able to see, quite okay, but in any short sense of thoughts, we need to steer the participation of the small players in the market, so that we're able to do from there. Even just when you look at the unemployment level accelerating as we speak right this moment, the participation of SMEs is what required. Obviously, know that yes, it's going to affect the policy, will affect there will be a slowdown in terms of participation of SME in the market. We that sort of being pegged at a different level. Of course, with a 0.5% across the board, it comes out a cost. And we have seen that it's quite quite a lot of work. Some people actually thought to share business for almost like 10 years. It's just something to work out in that way.
When we talk about the issue of inflation, and this is the motive for even adjusting the MPR at the moment, is to control the inflation rate. And today, like you indicated, we've seen a reduction of the inflation now coming to 19 point something, like you did indicate. And some stakeholders are shocked with some of the revelations which have come, saying that the cost of goods and services has gone down, hence the reduced rate of inflation. Is that a true reflection of what is happening on the ground today? Is it true that the cost of goods and services have gone down at the moment? Or maybe there are other external factors that have caused the inflation to get to 19%?
Okay. Maybe you may be privy to know that Zambian case, of course, talking about this so strongly, our inflation is always looted from the exchange rate. Of course, we've seen that the exchange has been a little bit moderate, and that also is a compelling case that we quite actually put to say that it should have been the biggest contributor here. But again, also food part as well as employment, all those are compounding factors of the inflation that causes in the Zambian economy. But again, also we have over years we have seen the reduction in the food composition of countries. Of course, it will take time for us to actually see how this has worked out. Maybe the basis that I may put to say that because of the component exchange rate moving so slow in the way that things have worked out, the last third, it's actually bounding to all factors. It's because exchange rate is slow movement, and that has contributed largely at this moment.
So you agree with me that it is not a true reflection on the ground on the reduced cost of goods and services? Well,
there's been some nomination in terms of food, which we are able to say some of the things meat, a few other food actually, but that cannot compose bigger. What is that will be turning on the ground as we may speak from it? It's an issue that slowing down in terms of effect that has actually been overeating over time. If you may be able to see that the second quarter of the year was very, very bad. That's the reason why even when it came to the central government, central bank, it actually had to make some aggressive action in terms of intervention in the market by releasing some few dollars to cool effect. And that has really not up with the electoral reform as well as seeing now the percent of the foreign investors. It's basically coming from there. But because of our low yield that is coming from securities as government treasuries is what is now also a compounding factor to also trigger the amount of policy. Just say here, there could be some few goods that are still high in terms of inflation, but also have actually started going down.
In case you're just joining us, this is the Thursday edition of the Corridors of Power. On the show tonight, we analyze critically the implications and the effect that the adjusted monetary policy rate, MPR, by the Bank of Zambia from 8.5% to 9% has on the business community as well as the ordinary Zambians. We are coming to you live from Alongika Studios right here in the capital city, Lusaka. Also streaming this live as usual on our Facebook platform, that is Millennium TV Zambia. I want to get interactive with you. You can also drop your comments, your questions on the subject under discussion. What effect does the adjusted MPR have, not only on you, but on your business as well, and of course the ordinary Zambians? Drop your questions. We'll be glad to interact with you. Discussing this with an economic analyst, Kelvin Chisanga. We take a short break. When we get back, Mr. Kelvin Chisanga and I will be driving straight into the implications of the possible hike of tariffs, both the fuel as well as electricity. Stay glued.
are we? What are we about? Say you want to learn about business or get latest news updates in business news, social and economic issues, stock exchange, latest exchange rates, and all financial matters, or you want to learn on how to manage your money from savings, banking, insurance, to maybe our new traditional way of doing things like village banking. And if you're like me, planning and constantly making sound financial decisions is essential. So I need to keep abreast with upcoming investments, taxes, technology, or entrepreneurship prospects. Interesting, right? So what if I told you by just one click you can learn from mining, agriculture, tourism, manufacturing services, and yes, entertainment industries. After all, the more you know about money, the better financially you will be. So who are we? What are we about? Millennium TV, your first business and financial news television channel. Catch us on Topstar Channel 95 or follow us on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube. Millennium TV, we mean business.
Okay, so just joining us, this is the Thursday edition of the Corridors of Power, coming to you live from our Longika studios right here in the capital city, Lusaka, analyzing the impact and the effect that the adjusted monetary policy rate by the Bank of Zambia will have, not just on the business community, but as well as the ordinary Zambians out there. Kelvin Chisanga, an economic analyst, is with me on the show as we discuss this further. We also want to get interactive with you. You can drop your questions, comments, and contributions on Facebook or streaming this live as usual on our social media platform, that is Millennium TV Zambia. My name is Paul Shingongo. Now, Mr. Chisanga, I want us to talk about briefly and speculate, of course, because we've seen, yesterday we heard the statement that came from the Bank of Zambia chief, who indicated, and of course others have not received this statement quite well, and condemned him for issuing such insinuations which will not go well with the Zambians if it actually happens. This is the issue of increasing the tariffs for fuel as well as electricity. Do you feel that we are heading there whether we like it or not?
Well, this issue is an inevitable issue that is actually coming up. And if you look at it from the cost of service charge for energy in Zambia, this has been a highly recommendable, faculty. And even just when you look at even just the budget that has been running from previous years up to probably this year, perhaps I could also even take about next year's budget. We've actually been recording some negative allocation, or rather negative, which I will put it to say that what we can classify as a deficit. Like, for example, that from last year or up to this year, budget, structure, and of which we are to have another deficit coming in the next budget, to maybe say 9%. Yeah. So the reason why I'm explaining, to look at it, for example, we take quite a number of interest in the budget that is running to, or this year. The budget this year has component has been allocated, to actually spend. We're supposed to have spent about 9.5 billion kwacha for most of the government expenses. There has been an overshoot. We have gone to about 112 billion. Mind you, the for this year has been 119 billion. So you could even see from there that before the end of the year, we are almost going to about 139 billion in terms of expense that we have overshoot. If you look at the price we're supposed to increase like maybe even just a normal of about 5% in terms of making things within the budget. So now I'm trying to say is that the issue that has caused some of these abnormal localities of some of these issues, it's because we have spent so much we have spent so much on the agriculture subsidy. So those are quite heavy stuff on the treasury, and which that's more reason why we are now going to a place of cost-reflective sort of arrangement in terms of market models. So if you look at what happened over time, even when there have been some negotiation with the IMF, it's from that background that we actually anchor the expectations and be cost-reflective sort of pricing on the market. So that's a more reason. And in fact, even just from there, that's a reason why Bank of Zambia now has unaffected focus in terms of inflation. And that's the reason why they are counteracting it with an increase of about 0.5%. But also, now, it should have waited up to MPC meeting or MPC briefing. But all the same, maybe it has been because of the projection that they are looking to start seeing from January. What I would say, yes, the possible increase of fuel is likely to have a great economic impact on the growth that we are able to see, like this moment as we are recording positive outlook in the economy.
But now, would you then join the group of people also that would call for the removal of these subsidies? I know some energy experts are against the removal of subsidies and understand that when we remove these subsidies, then, like many have indicated, we're going to have a cost-reflective system where we know exactly how much we are paying for this, how much is costing the government to bring in these particular commodities. What then would you call for? Would you join the group of people that are calling for the removal of subsidies, especially in the energy sector?
You have put my head on the chopping board. But all the same, what I would say is that, yes, the government needs to let things in a stick way. And obviously, we go at a point where we need to do things in a very civilized way. What we need to do is that we need first to take stock of what has been happening. We need to ensure all the economic leakages are being facing in the procurement of or as well as procurement of energy, maybe in sense that everything. That's there should be a proper way that we need to understand who has been benefiting from there, where are the leakages. If we understand that matrix of what has been happening from there, of course we understand that the prices of oil on the international has been taking an upward trend. But obviously, when you look at it in the sense that maybe one would say, we are going to have a very bad shock if we go by increasing of the commodity. Because obviously, when you look at the way the current economic underplay, it's quite promising, and we're going to see, some GDP come next year. But if we take it up in that sense to counteract what we're expecting or what is to happen.
How easy is it? I'm having questions within myself here. How easy is it to reduce the tariffs? Because we understand, and many Zambians out there also do attest to the fact that when, for example, President Hakainde Hichilema was in opposition, these are some of the things that he was very passionate about. He called for a reduction in terms of cost of tariffs for fuel and ZESCO. And he promised that this was going to happen when he becomes president. But it's like we are seeing a very different twist. It's like even him, after ascending to the office, he now gets to understand exactly how the system works, and it's not as easy as it used to be seen from the terraces. How easy is it, or maybe how difficult is it to ensure that these tariffs reduce? Because we never see, or rarely see, a reduction of the tariffs except for the increase.
Okay, maybe the other issue that I would love to put to attention is an issue that also I must have mentioned where we are ELRB undertaking, through a consultant, undertaking the cost of study for energy in Zambia. And but there has been some recommendations that come through there, of which it's one of the actually being strongly put on the table. But again, also, as I mentioned, the issue to do with budget deficit has also been a key concern factor. Is not only also that we can also say that even when you look at national debt portfolio, some of the components are also speaking to that, because we have not been able to be substantially helping out in terms of servicing some of the loans, and if anything, ZESCO also has debts which government guaranteed, so it has also been under inefficient sort of operations. So it needs some sort of backup. So that's the more reason why this play into the picture. So we need to ensure that we have a proper efficiency, coming from the utility company, national utility company. Obviously, there could have also been other way that we could actually look in a way that things can work out. But I think coming with that concept, it should be a moderate to actually embrace at some point.
Others have said, before we even look at the issue of the tariffs, let's ensure that we do a cleanup. And I know you've spoken in parts about that subject as well in this particular discussion. Let's focus on these institutions themselves. Let's make maybe restructuring, and President Ichilema has been very categorical on the restructuring, for example, of the power utility companies, ZESCO, and ELRB as well. What would you call for? What would you expect to see as a lasting solution?
Well, Paul, the biggest part with the ZESCO has to do with transmission of power or services to the final consumer, and that's the most expensive component. So I think unbundling the national utility company is one of the biggest objectives that need to be looked at critically in a way. Obviously, we need to ensure that, because obviously when you also consider the other component with the transmission, we have at times where vandalism also takes loss of property, loss of assets. So that is also one of the key components which has been there as well. Yeah, I think there's a need to restructure in such a way that the commercial side of transmission is well taken care of. I think that is not a big issue as per se, but just the commercial side of transmission which needs to be looked at.
Mr. Kelvin Chisanga, thank you so much for coming through on tonight's edition of the Corridors of Power. It's always a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you. Thank you.
That was Mr. Kelvin Chisanga, an economic analyst, joining us on the Thursday edition of the Corridors of Power. And of course, this is where we wrap up today's edition of this exciting program. We're back again next week, Thursday, from 20 hours to 21 hours. On behalf of the entire production crew, my name is Paul Shingongo. Have a pleasant evening.